Hello, hello, everyone. We are live for another positive talk. Hopefully, you all are doing well. Super excited about the fact that I am so close to episode 200. If you haven't already, please make sure that you sign up for my newsletter. It is in my link on my profile. There is going to be some amazing changes here coming shortly, and I will be keeping everyone up to date through my newsletter. So make sure that you sign up for that. Like I said, it's in the link, and I'm super excited about where Positive Talks is transitioning to, as well as some of the new stuff that is going to be happening here for me in the near future. So please, please, please sign up for that newsletter so that you all can stay informed, because everyone that's signed up for the newsletter will most definitely be hearing from me first. Let's see if I can find him in invite. Hello, Cindy. Okay, so let's see. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi, I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
Good, good. It is it's a rainy day here, and like I gain my energy from the sun, so like I'm trying to
Hmm.
like just have tons of lights on me to kind of make my body believe the sun is here.
Yeah, well, I live in Vancouver, so we have barely any sun throughout the year, especially during the winter. Happy lights will be wonderful when you're doing that for sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine. When I learned about there are places in the world where like there are days where like there is no sunlight whatsoever, I was like that would be like the worst place for me to live, because like on rainy days I literally just want to sit in bed and just watch Netflix. I don't feel productive at all. But like when there's fresh air and sun, I'm just like, let's do it. Let's get everything taken care of.
Yeah, I personally find the rain very beautiful sometimes. So I think that um, I find it sometimes very energizing, actually. I can understand that the sun definitely gives you a very special type of energy, but there's a lot of power in the rain that I really enjoy. So,
I mean, when I was little, I used to sit on like the front porch and watch it like come across the field, because I lived on a 1,200-acre farm. So like I enjoyed watching it, but like I'm definitely tired, and it's not like if I wake up and I know I need to be productive for the day and it's raining, I'm like, "Oh no. Turn on all the lights quick."
yes, I can understand that for sure.
Awesome. Well, I will let you introduce yourself so people know who you are,
Okay,
and then we can kind of jump into a discussion.
amazing. So I'm Sergio, and my on Instagram you'll find me as Sadhana Living. Um, I am Well, I live in Vancouver, but I am a game designer, a makeup artist, and a instructor for the Ishajad system, which is a meditation system. It's an introspective meditative system, um, and that is pretty much yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I know that what we had discussed before we came onto the live, and it's something that we've kind of discussed over private calls as well, is just the idea of growth and the
Mhm.
importance of growth. And when it comes to growth, uh, understanding that sometimes when you grow, you can't bring everything with you. And
Mhm.
I think that that's kind of a fun topic, because there's lots of different ways that we can grow. Uh, and sometimes life forces us to grow when we don't want to. Sometimes it allows us to make some choices on our own. But at the end of the day, we can definitely grow with intention, no matter which side of the scale it's on.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the word that I really enjoy when it comes to growth, at least in the way that I like to think about it, is evolution, right? It's because when you're growing, you're changing, and everything about you is changing. You're evolving into a new person, And of course, with that comes a lot of change, and it may be like changing your environment, it may be change uh, in the people that you're surrounded with, even change within yourself, just how you feel about yourself, or even how you look at yourself in the mirror, you know? There can be so many things that change in your life, so many things that evolve.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because one of the things that I thought was kind of funny in my own personal growth was some things that when I was younger that I was like, I will never do that. As I grew and kind of became the person that I am today, I started to realize the things that I said I would never do was just because at that time in my life, those things didn't really make sense to me. But
Mhm.
as I kind of grew into the person that I am today, those things started to make a lot more sense. And it's just like all those sayings and all the advice that people gave me when I was younger and just wasn't ready to hear it makes a lot more sense now that I'm older and have had experiences that have kind of helped me understand those things.
Mhm. And to me, I'm like, I hear you say that, and I'm like, and that's probably going to change as well. You know, the things that you think are working for you in this moment may change completely in a different moment. When you get older, because of other experiences, you may actually completely disagree with what you're saying even today, or what you said before, or you may start agreeing with your parents, you know, or even becoming your parents in some cases.
Yeah, it's funny because like if you think about like generations before us, like maybe you could write a book or maybe there's like a magazine or a newspaper article that you could read and be like, wow, when I was that age, I was kind of crazy in my thought process. But like now I'm sitting here, I'm like, wow, I'm almost scared to watch some of my like original content that I've created on like YouTube or other platforms because I'm like, that that person is definitely a very different person, but I've been pleasantly surprised because I think that I've got some very strong core values. I've definitely grown a lot around the core values, and of course, some of them have shifted some. But I've like some of the time hop stuff that pops up on my news feed that's like 8 years ago, you posted this, and I read it, and I'm like, oh, look at him, he's killing it.
Those are wonderful. Sometimes a little horrifying to see. You're like, ooh, those were some very interesting choices we were making in the past, eh?
Yeah, I
But
mean,
it's so good to see the growth, you know? Like I actually a lot of times really enjoy watching photos of myself like from 5 years ago, 8 years ago, from high school, you know? Because I look at that person and I can uh see it in a very different light, you know? Like I remember a few months ago I was looking at some really old photos of myself. I had done a photo shoot, and I remember when I did the photo shoot, I I hated the photos. I thought I looked awful. I thought I there was something about it that I just wasn't happy with. And now looking back at the photos recently, I was like, wow, you were really harsh with yourself when you first took these. Because they're actually fine. They actually look pretty good, and I did enjoy them. And it just shows how critical sometimes we can be with ourselves. And like it really showed me that growth, especially when it came to self-love. I was like, oh, I can be so much gentler with myself in this moment than what I was when these came out, you know?
yeah. I mean, I deleted a lot of my online content from like 2013 back. So like I don't have a lot of memories unless it's on other people's pages past that. But it's definitely very interesting because I can remember how hard I was on myself just in general and the things that just seemed so life-changing and life-ending and just made me feel like my life was like coming to a halt. And like now, 10 years later, I'm sitting here like looking at this, and it's crazy to look back and try to remember those things that felt so life ending or halting at that time. And I can't really remember most of them because, like, as I've grown, those things became very small, just tasks that I grew from at that moment. And things that I've dealt with now, like, are a lot bigger than the things that I dealt with back then. And all I honestly remember was like the good times that I can attach to like the pictures and memories that I do find when I go scrolling through social media. I try not to scroll too much, but it's very interesting to kind of see where your mind goes. Like, I've read some old journals that I took and wrote at those times, and it's kind of like you're sitting there like, wow, you made this small event seem so like catastrophic, and it really wasn't.
Hmm. Actually, you just reminded me, I had recently found a I wish I had it nearby. I recently found a sketchbook because when I was growing up, I used to write down all of my emotions.
Mhm.
I used to, I loved, I wasn't very good at communicating my emotions. That is something that I've worked really hard on in my adult life. But growing up, I didn't feel like I had the tools to communicate. So I would write it down. I would write everything that I was feeling down. And I found one of those writings a few weeks back, and it was fascinating. First of all, it was so dramatic. I felt I was reading it and I was like, ooh, because I was being super critical of myself, super critical of my parents. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry, Mom, for what I said in those letters because oh my God. But but yeah, it just showed me. I was like, oh wow, like I was a dramatic little one when I was when I was writing these ones, and it just reminded me when you said like sometimes the things that you write, these journals that I used to write, f- just I just found it and it showed so much growth. Uh,
It's also kind of interesting, like people who played like major roles in like certain parts of your life, and how maybe they didn't move to the next stage of your life, because I've moved a lot. So there's a lot of people that have played like very core like roles in certain areas when I lived different places. But to go back and see like, oh wow, someone who was like my world, someone that I like connected with probably on a very daily basis at that time in my life, like there's no like certain day where you're like, oh, this was the last day that we spoke to each other, but like it was the last day that we spoke to each other. And it's very interesting to kind of see like it wasn't a horrible dramatic like end, but it just kind of became more distant in my past and wasn't so connected to my future. And it's kind of nice to reconnect, but then it's also kind of beautiful to like see our lives just kind of go in different directions and grow, and not feel bad that we kind of grew apart, and just celebrate the growth from when we were close and celebrate where we are now without like attacking yourself for like outgrowing that moment in your life.
yeah, I mean, I think you said something that is very key to me, which is really celebrating the moment that you're in, right? And celebrating the growth. Because sometimes I feel like, especially when you're going through a big growth, when you change very quickly, when you take a big leap in terms of growth, um, it's very easy to get lost in the change. And it is to me so important to really put a lot of focus on on appreciating all of the work that you've done. You know, appreciating this moment and the amazing uh, work that you've put out, all the growth that you've created. You know, rather than uh, getting lost in some of the things that are changing and trying to hold on to a past image of yourself. Um, and also celebrating that past image of yourself because without them you wouldn't be in this moment, you know.
Yeah. And I definitely think that it depends on how you look at growth, like how painful that growth can be. because I think that if you look at it as you're losing something, it can be a very painful experience to grow because you're focusing on the I'm leaving all of this behind and not so much focusing on everything that you will gain from the growth that you are creating. And that's one thing that I've been struggling with. And I know that you and I have talked about this, not on a live, but sometimes when you grow very quickly, like you leave a lot of stuff behind that really you thought were like core identity, like pieces of you as a person. And like when you want to grow, when you say, I've got dreams, I've got goals, there's more I want that I currently don't have. Like, unfortunately, there is a limit for how much you can hold around you. And sometimes to gain that, you have to let go and create space for the new.
Hmm. And I think it's important to remember that sometimes that change can be very uncomfortable. You know, because when you're letting go of so many things like that, there can be so much uncomfortability that comes with that. You know, you can feel very lost in this new space. You know, to me, the analogy that comes to my head is like a snake shedding its old skin, you know. Sometimes they out like when they grow, they have to shed that old skin, and that's not a comfortable process. They I don't know if you've ever seen. I used to own a snake, so this is a something that I'm fairly familiar with. But like when they shed for a little bit, they go blind because they have to create a cap on their eyelids. um, they'll get really uncomfortable. They won't want to move a lot, and sometimes they even need help, you know, to like really get that skin off before they before they finish, you know, some because it'll get stuck. Sometimes it comes off in little pieces. I'm sure it's very uncomfortable. I'm not a snake personally, but but I can only imagine. Uh, and I just see the same idea with your own emotional growth, you know. Sometimes it can be quite uncomfortable. That change can be uncomfortable. And even though you are creating these beautiful scales and this beautiful new skin for yourself, uh, shedding the old one isn't always easy.
Yeah. And I can kind of say that I'm a snake because I've been throwing out all my old clothes, which is like my old skin, and like it's interesting because like for a while I was very very connected to certain things because of memories that I attached to them, not realizing that I was really starting to become very overcrowded in my life. And I knew that clutter is something that like really clogs my mind when it comes to being productive. If I'm constantly going, okay, I've got a huge pile of clothes, I'm going to move it from my desk to my bed. Well, now it's time for bed, so I'm going to move it to my desk from my bed. And it became such a hassle that I was like, I really need to let go of some things. And it was interesting because I was watching the Hoarder show. Like some people watch like the you have to hug it, like appreciate it, and then let it go. But like I had to watch Hoarders to like put me in the right mindset of okay, how many like pieces of clothing does an average human being have? You need to start to kind of move towards that instead of assuming that you're going to have 3 apartments worth of clothes one day, because I just didn't need it all. And it was uncomfortable for a little bit because like I kept sitting there and I was just like, the memory, but like once I kind of got it out and separated, I was like, it's got to get out of the apartment, because if it sits somewhere else in the apartment, then there will be a part of me that wants to latch back onto it and go back through and be like, I still really like this one. But like sometimes you just have to step through the fear of that and step and like really just cut ties of that connection and move forward into the future and realize that's a healthy step forward. And it felt very relieving to like drop them off at like the diversity thrift shop here in Richmond and just walk away from them. And I was just like, Wow, that's a very uplifting like feeling. I want to do it
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. It can be very scary too. I remember actually not too long ago, so about a year and a half ago, I went to Mexico to do a meditation program, and how I got to be an instructor for the Ishijud system uh, is you have to go to the center for 6 months and do a training program, you know. And for me to go there, I was a huge challenge because it meant that I had to leave everything behind. I had an apartment, I had a job, I had a lot of stuff that I had to let go to be able to go. That was like there was no choice just because of how the things were happening in that moment. And I remember that I got rid of like I want to say like 90% of my possessions because I didn't want to store them. uh, or in that moment, actually, I didn't have where to store them. So I remember just grabbing like clothes and putting bags upon bags of clothes and shoes and all of the things that I had like quote unquote hoarded into or even like just gathered throughout my life. And it was just putting memory after memory after memory after memory after memory in a bag and then just nodding it and throwing it out or giving it away to the point where I was left with two suitcases, one for winter, one for summer,
Oh wow.
uh, and one for all of my makeup, and that was it. You know, I had nothing else left because I had gotten rid of everything other than two suitcases, my computer, and my work stuff or like my makeup stuff for work. You know, um, and it felt very freeing, but also very scary because I was like, I feel like I have nothing now, you know, like at least externally, like in terms of externally, I had left, like I had nothing. I didn't have all of my clothes. I didn't have my job. I didn't have my apartment. I was leaving all of my friends and family. I was going to a new place to be alone, and I was like, oh, I've lost everything. And the reality of that is I actually didn't lose anything because when I came back, I regained all of it fairly quickly. But what I gained by going to this experience was like priceless and way beyond all the things that I quote unquote lost, you know?
It's so interesting because like almost everything that you were talking about like losing is what most of us when you ask to like describe yourself or what is your identity, like a lot of those things that you let go of is the first things that we jump so quickly to like identify ourselves. Like we identify ourselves by the relationships we have with people. We identify ourselves with the careers that we do. We identify ourselves with our possessions, and like at the end of the day, like all of those things could be gone. And you have to understand like your identity exists without any physical being like possessions
Mhm.
attached to it. It's like, how would you describe yourself without describing yourself with any of those things? And you kind of got to experience that when you let it all go and just up and move somewhere completely different because your environment didn't describe you anymore because you changed that. Like your possessions that you gave away, your friends that you walked away from temporarily, family. And it's just so interesting how scary that can be. Like, because this transition that I'm going through, I am letting go of a lot of those things. And it's like I keep making little excuses for why I want to hold on to certain things. And then life is just like, give it and just rips it out. I'm like, no, but I mean, sometimes it's good to have life kind of take that out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think through this you get to really discover like um that who you are goes so much beyond what you have and what you do, you know? I like one of the things that I really learned in this journey is that it doesn't really matter what I do, and it doesn't really matter what I have. I'm still me. And to be fair, like I don't even know what that means. You know, like I know how it feels to be me, but I don't have an idea of what that is. Like one of the things that has happened in my growth specifically is that started to lose the definition of who I am in a very beautiful way, because all of the things that I always put as like, oh, Sergio is this. Sergio is, I don't know, a swimmer. Sergio is a successful person. Sergio is smart, has a good memory. Whatever it was, um, were yes true, but also put me in like a very rigid box. And the more I've been able to let go of those um, labels that I've put onto myself and just being like, well, I don't know, I am just me, you know. I I have been able to really um, feel freed to explore me and explore so many things that I would have never been able to or never even dreamed of, you know,
Yeah.
just by having a yes to what comes instead of being like no because that doesn't fit who I am.
Yeah. And I mean, there's lots of times where I think we will give up opportunities because we'll be like, this opportunity does not align with the definition of who I have assigned me to be. And
Hmm.
it's always so interesting when people are so, so sure of exactly who they are. And I'm just like, really? Are you? Are you super sure? Because like every day I'm even more unsure than I was the day before because yesterday I was someone, even saying like at the beginning of this live, I was someone, and then by the end of this live, I will be someone else. It
Yeah.
grows sometimes, but sometimes like things are pulled out and things are replaced. And it's just like a journey that I'm willing to go on just because I mean, I think if you start really defining yourself too strictly, then that gives someone a space to kind of hold you accountable for something and assume something about you, where it's like, well, this person is like, I will use an example that I've dealt with is this person's a pushover. So people labeled me as someone that would you could screw over and he's still going to be your friend because he's very forgiving. He understands. So there was a time where people were like, "Oh, well, if two plans fall on top of each other, Drummond will be the one I cancel on because he will forgive me where someone else might not be as forgiving." And it made me realize that I was accepting that as who I was as a person. And therefore, it was repetitive in my life in every single way possible. And I was like, this hurts every single time. And I was like, I do not want to be that person. I can be a forgiving person and a loving person, but I can also be a person that asks people to be respectful of my time. And you don't have to be an asshole to ask someone to be respectful of you.
Hmm.
And I think that that was like the line I had to realize was I can ask for respect, but I don't have to be hateful and I can still be loving. So it's remembering that sometimes like things that are so clearly defined in your mind, if you take a look at it, can be defined in other ways that actually align and make you feel good about the life that you're living.
Hmm. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying about evolution, you know? Like humans are in constant evolution and you can choose you have I well at least this is what I believe, but I believe that you have two kind of choices, you know? Uh you can flow with the evolution of the world and with the evolution of yourself, or you can resist it. Um, None of which are a wrong choice, but in general, everything changes. You know, if you look at nature, if you look at society, if you look at your city, even like everything outside, the world is constantly evolving, constantly changing, and it is so it's such a joy to join in that evolution. Um, to join in that change and allow yourself to explore different aspects of yourself. Um, and resisting it, works, but sometimes can create a little bit of stagnation in yourself. Especially if everything around you is changing and there's this refusal to change. And the other thing that, like, I just wanted to point out, because I really liked what you said, um, is the fact that, like, uh, every one of us has very different aspects, like, we are not just one thing, we are so many different things. And that doesn't mean that any of those aspects are wrong. It's just they serve a different purpose in every moment. And I really like the fact that you said, oh, I can be a certain way and still be loving. That happens to me a lot. I'm a very direct person. And sometimes I can be very harsh in terms of in that way, but it always comes from a loving space, you know. So, me,
Mhm.
I'm still human. Sometimes I still I still act from a place of stress,. But for the most part, when I say things, they come from a place of a loving place, from a place where I'm trying to uplift the other person. But it can be very shocking, and sometimes being loving doesn't necessarily mean being nice, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I I've seen the quotes where they talk about like a good friend is the person who will call you out and help you grow. But that, like we said, it's not always comfortable. It's not always easy to have your like life called out and put right in your face. But I think that I see that Billy just commented Bossy Drummond because I've pushed her as well. So when it comes to um, like growth, sometimes you just need a friend that loves you enough to push you out of your comfort zone because they know you deserve better and they want to see you have better. And unfortunately, sometimes that means you have to move out of what's comfortable and feels good. Because, like, there have been tons of people who, like, send me tons of compliments. And when I talk about the things that I'm struggling with, they're like, oh, you're not struggling. And I'm like, I am though. Like I need to grow here and I need support in this growth. I don't need support to stay in this space. And I'm the type of person that, yeah, some friends distance themselves from me because I am the type of friends that I want everyone to grow. And when I hear people talking about the pain that they're experiencing from staying in their comfort, I'm like, okay, I'll push you. I'll get you out. Don't worry. And it's not always fun. And sometimes like there's some like anger between the two people, but like when you look at it, it's coming from a place of love because I know that you deserve more than what you are currently being given in life.
Hmm. That, like, I 100% agree with you in that sense. Like, I feel very reflected in what you're saying, because I very much have that mentality a lot of times, especially even with people that I don't know. One of the things that I have realized as I've grown and as I've changed is that um, I'm more and more capable of loving everybody equally. Um, And so sometimes a complete stranger may come to me and say something about themselves or to me that I feel will not serve either of us, and I will challenge that. Not because I'm trying to be an asshole to this random person that I don't know, but because me humoring something like that, like a bad behavior, is not going to serve me and it's not going to be serve them. So it's not loving, you know? Even though it may create some confrontation, I humoring bad behavior sometimes just doesn't serve, you know? And I'm going to push you to grow even though I don't like you. Or even though I don't know you at all, even though I just met you or I just crossed you on the street.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes people, it's just sharing a perspective that you can do with what you want. Like, everything that I say won't sit well with everyone, but you can always take pieces of it and try. Like I always tell people, like I try to get you all to answer questions. Uh I don't try to give advice because I know that the advice that worked well for me will not work well for everyone on this planet. So it's just asking questions to get people to see a different perspective than the current one that they're presenting to me. Because when I hear people talking about the limits that they have in their life, what they're doing is they're backing themselves into a corner. And I just want to help them out of the corner and show them a couple doors that they can choose from. Um, I mean, possibilities are all around us, but if we choose to like very much focus on like the floor and not look up because we're just looking at the thing that's spilt right in front of us, like we don't notice that there's tons of things to like kind of help us move in a different direction. But if we hyper focus on certain things, it can stunt your growth and keep you in a place of discomfort where you're just not happy, and then that does pour into everything else around you. So like your loved ones will suffer if you choose to not grow and like intentionally bring a better life into your existence, because when you start to become bitter, like everyone that you love is seeing that and it hurts them. And if you're not taking the journey to love yourself, you are still hurting the people around you.
Hmm. And you're hurting yourself, like to me, I've seen some people um, like very close to me uh, not want to grow. And it's a very sad thing to watch because eventually, like, as I continue to evolve, I have to leave those people behind. Um, and so it can be quite sad to see people not grow. And one of the things that I wanted to say with what you were saying is like in terms of like giving advice, I've discovered with my own growth that I cannot really give advice to anybody. You know, I remember I used to think that like helping people meant that I had to fix their things or tell them what they had to do, and um, sometimes that just doesn't work. The more I grow, the more I realize that the only thing that I can really do is I can share my experience, I can share my growth and the ways that I went about evolving, the ways that I went about growing, uh, and what my experiences were, and then they can maybe find inspiration in that, maybe learn something from that and use it. um, I don't know, like use those experiences and see them through their own lens and see what they can do to achieve some form of evolution, because everybody's journey is very different. We've all had very different experiences. So like what I think would work perfect for me may not work for you at all.
Yeah. It's interesting because I had a conversation with someone the other night and I was asking them if they still found life to be magical, because I personally think that my life is very magical. And like they were talking about how like magic's a trick, magic's dies, magic's like Santa Claus to children. And I was like, no, I think that magic is something that we can't personally understand, but is beautiful to us. And I was like, honestly, like as adults, like we are creating things out of nothing. Most pieces of art, most music, those things are created from nothing. Music is created from silence, and then we put sound to that silence, and that's a creation. And to me, like that's beautiful. And like for me, putting myself in situations where I see absolutely no possibility of achieving something and something happening and an achievement existing just out of nowhere, like that's magical. And I think
Hmm.
that through life, like you still have to find magic, like, and then realize that you as an individual have the ability to create magic for other people around you. So like I've talked to people and they're like, it's so crazy. Like, I have been like talking to the universe and asking for this to happen in my life, and you just did it. And I was like, I don't know why I did it. I just felt the urge to do this for a certain person. And I feel like we all have those feelings. Like, we have those thoughts of like, I really want to do this for this person, not knowing that the universe is also having this person saying, I really wish this could happen. And like, we all have skills and gifts that other people around us don't have. And you can give those gifts, and gifts are magic. Like, that is something that like would take hours and hours and hours for one person to do, where for you it's a gift of just giving it freely because you on your journey have obtained the knowledge to create that gift quickly for someone. And I think that that's a beautiful thing to give. And to hear people like say magic is a trick, I'm just like, that's such a sad way to look at magic, because magic is such a beautiful thing to have.
Yeah. I mean, to me, magic is an internal experience. You know, this is just the experience that I've had with it. Um, I think it comes from within. It comes from like your own self-love and your ability to be here now with yourself in the present moment. You know, because it's always there and it always will be there. And to me, what really showed me that it was an internal experience was actually living in the city. So because um, being here, I have gone through really hard experiences and really amazing experiences. And there was times while I was living here where I thought that um, this city was the biggest hell on earth. I felt like I was living in a dark, gloomy place where like with no joy and no magic, and like it was the worst place ever. And now I think the city is basically paradise, you know? Like I find so much beauty everywhere I go. I find like I find joy, I find love, I find so many beautiful things. Um, and the city didn't change at all. I did. My
Yeah.
internal experience changed, but the city didn't change at all, you know? So to me, it was very clear that all of that magic, that this paradise that I now see, was always there,
Yeah.
but I just wasn't ready to see it. And so for me, it's very like it's very clear that that magic that you're speaking about, it comes from an internal experience.
Yeah. And a great way, because everything changes, like we've already talked about. So the city, of course, changed. But like, the best way to kind of look at it is like, while you're sitting here thinking that this place is your own personal hell, there could be someone standing right next to you, same day, same moment, having this experience that you are currently now having with that city. And in that sense, yeah, it is all about your perspective that you decide to kind of create. And there are so many people who don't realize that that is like an important shift. And they're like, this city is hell. I need to move out to find happiness. The grass is definitely greener on the other side because there's absolutely no grass here. And it's just like, you're going to take that mindset and destroy another city. You're like Godzilla in your mind, and you're just moving from city to city, just wiping it out and destroying it. Because it's so interesting when I talk to people and I hear like, I'm like, oh, I was looking to move to like Denver, and someone's like, oh, don't move there, worst city I've ever lived in, all the people and this and that. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk to you, I'm going to talk to somebody else, because I know that the city is neutral and it's the experience you create from it. Like, living here in Richmond, I've found beautiful things. Like, I love nature and I found it within the city. And I can find people that I align with. Like, it might not be the first person I bump into on the streets, but you have to keep your possibilities open, because if you just go, okay, first person was shitty, everyone in Richmond is shitty, like that, of course, like the chances of you moving to a new place and bumping into the right person first time, like, is a very small chance. But if you're like, okay, let's give it a couple months and see who I can find, and then intentionally putting yourself in places where you would align with people that have similar values that you can appreciate and enjoy, it definitely changes your perspective.
Yeah, of course. You know, like as we're talking about this, it reminds me of a parable that my guru likes to tell. Um, and so I'll tell it to you because it's a quick little short story. Um, and it goes like this. So um, there's a monk sitting outside of a town, smoking his pipe and just having a wonderful time. And a man comes in a caravan and he says, I'm looking to move into the city. What are the people like in the city? And so the monk replies and he goes, well, what were the people like in the city that you just came from? And so the guy goes, oh, they were horrible. They all stole from each other. They were awful. Nobody liked me. It was the worst. And so the monk looks at him and he says, well, I'm sorry to tell you that the people in this city that you will find will be exactly the same. And so the guy furiously goes, oh, well, then I'd have to move to the next city then. And he goes away. And then comes another man um, in a caravan, and he asks the same question. He goes, oh, um, I want to move into the city. What are the people like in the city? So the monk looks at him with a smile, and he says, well, what were the people like in the city that you just came from? And he says, oh, well, they were wonderful. I was so sad to have to leave them. You know, they were so lovely. They baked bread for me every morning. And I just loved everyone in my neighborhood. It was amazing. And so the monk smiles and he says, well, I think in the city you will find people that are very similar. Welcome. And to me, that is such a wonderful parable because like that really shows the truth of like what it is to look for external validation or that external peace, you know, but that never really happens because if you're looking for it outside all the time, it's not going to happen. You have to find it internally. You have to find it. Your perspective has to change.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one thing that I noticed when I moved back to like my hometown and spoke to people about like our experiences of like high school. And like I hung out with a different group of people than they did. And like when I talked about high school, I was like, oh yeah, like we were doing all this and like we had church camps and we did all these types of activities and we went to explore the museums and we did all these show choir practices and theater practices, and everyone was just like so accepting of each other. And my friend was like, everyone at our school was like doing drugs and like doing like cheating on each other and doing all this stuff. I was like, gosh, like we really do kind of cross label everyone under the umbrella that we experience of these people. And
Hmm.
that was like one of the reasons I started these positive talks, was because I feel like a lot of people that I bring on uh, have been labeled with certain labels because a person is in a mindset that can label someone a horrible person, but it's a little bit harder to do that when you see two people talking about this type of stuff and you kind of see where the happy people are sitting in their mindset, and you're like, well, no wonder he loved this city. Like he's looking at the birds flying, the green trees, and he's not looking at like the mud puddles and the like stuff that is dead on the ground. Like every
Hmm.
place has all of it, and you can choose to define an entire place or know that it all exists together. And because of everything, it's a space of like balance. Like it has to have all of it. You can choose to look at one or the other, or you can choose to look at it all and understand that it's all important for it all to function the way that it does.
Hmm. And to me, like realizing that there is these two distinctions doesn't invalidate your bad experiences because, you having a positive mindset doesn't mean that you will never have bad experiences ever in your life, They happen. I am a person that has had a lot of bad experiences, and I've also had a lot of wonderful experiences. But so and me being positive doesn't invalidate all the bad things that may have happened. It just means that I have a choice to hold on to those and focus on that, or to start to focus on all of the amazing blessings that I've had instead, or as well, because it depends. It's all part of the growth.
Yeah. And I
It's all
mean,
part of what makes you you.
and it's such an interesting journey to kind of get to that point because it's not really taught in a lot of spaces for like the youth to understand that perspective. And like as a coach that kind of works with people to kind of get them to switch to that mindset to understand that it all exists. I'm not like saying that the things that you're pointing out aren't bad or that they don't exist in my positive realm. Like just because I choose to see the best in every situation doesn't mean that the things that you're labeling as worst don't exist. It's just I'm looking at it as, yeah, that really doesn't, that's not great. But
Hmm.
that shift, that event, that thing that is happening is also like having a butterfly effect on everything else around it. And you can choose to find the things that are being impacted by it in a good way, while also working to lessen the impact of the bad things that it's creating. Like you can put walls up and stop something from like hitting something else. But you also have to realize like that was one big thing I had to do when I started jumping into activism. I was so focused on all the bad things that needed to be like stopped, changed, like softened. But then I was forgetting to look at all the beautiful things that were changing around me as well. And I was just like, I'm so drained. Like, I can't keep doing this. And it took
Hmm.
someone going, like, look at all that you've done and look at the things that are positive from all of the things that are happening as well. And I was like, you're right. Like, sometimes something really intense has to happen for something to change and be better. Sometimes something has to be completely wiped off the table so that something new can grow there. And it's important for people to realize that it's that discomfort, it's the stepping through fear that has to happen sometimes to get to something better that's
Hmm.
growth for you.
Yeah, of course. To me, there is like the analogy of the cherry blossom to me is the best example of this. It happens natural in nature. Um, and I have a cherry blossom tattoo exactly for this because to me the cherry blossom is a perfect example of this. When you see the tree in the summer is this beautiful green tree that is full of birds and it looks beautiful. And then over the fall and winter, it starts to lose its leaves, its flowers, everything until it becomes a twig. Like it's just a bunch of branches. So there's nothing. Like it looks completely dead. Um, and then after the winter, when spring starts to happen, it uses all of that reserved energy that it gained throughout the winter to bloom into the one of the most magical things I have ever seen, you know? And to me, that's a perfect analogy because that is something that is necessary sometimes. Sometimes you need to shed all of your leaves. Sometimes you have to allow yourself to become a complete twig before you can bloom into your true potential.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of times when people feel like they've like come to their twig stage in their life, they feel like they were something that should be thrown away. They feel like their self-worth and just their purpose is just non-existent. And it's
Hmm.
like, no, like that's not this journey for you. Like this is a journey where like you're collecting your energy to do something better when the time comes. And like don't beat yourself up because you're not, because we can all sit next to like an evergreen tree that's
Hmm.
sitting there green year round and be like, now I'm ugly, like I'm useless, like this tree is completely, but those trees don't have the beautiful like cherry blossoms in the spring. Like they're just green. And like the moments of beauty that the cherry blossoms have, like the evergreens don't get that moment.
Hmm. It's such a wonderful thing, really. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that it's just important for people to like realize that sometimes life will force you to grow. Sometimes a big windstorm will just blow all your leaves off. Like that's the saddest thing for me. Like in the fall when like I know the leaves are changing and then there's like a huge rain windstorm and just all the leaves are gone so quick. But I like them when they last for at least a couple weeks. But sometimes life does that to us, and then other times like you get to kind of experience like the slow transition of choosing like when that change happens in your life. And sometimes you can choose to like take small steps, other times you have to take bigger ones to kind of get to the train that is now leaving the station that you want it to jump on.
Hmm. And to me, one of the things that has been so beautiful in my journey has been to allow that to happen, you know, allow myself to go through the the uncomfortable situations, the icky stuff going on, to be able to reach that, you know, the growth that is on the other side, the beauty that is on the other side. Because sometimes like growth means being uncomfortable, and this just goes back to the thing that we were talking about before, you know, it's that you kind of have to allow yourself to be uncomfortable sometimes, and sometimes it is very uncomfortable. Sometimes growth requires a lot of crying, a lot of getting angry, a lot of, you know, dealing with things that you never want to look at, you know, things about yourself that you never wanted to look at that are so uncomfortable to see. But once you actually can go past that um, uncomfortable state and let it go, it's the magic on the other side is undescribable, you know, is um, phenomenal.
Yeah. And I mean, it's all about just stepping through and taking that risk. Because, like, if you're sitting in comfort and you want growth, like, it's not going to come if you just sit and wait for it. Like, it might come in a way of a pandemic that makes you lose your job and all the things that you thought were going to stick around forever, but it won't be growth that kind of sends you in a direction that you intended. But realize that you can say, I want to go north, but you might run into something that requires you to go east for a little bit, and then you
Hmm.
can go back to your north. Or on your journey east, you might realize that east is a direction that feels a lot better for you. And that's all about part of the journey. Like you have to take the journey, you have to start taking those steps, or you'll never know. And you'll just sit in your head circling the same thought over and over and over again. And I've been there and it's not fun.
You know, to me, the moral of the story is that like you don't really know anything when it comes to growth, you know? You just have to allow and let yourself evolve in whatever way it comes. Because it can come a million ways and you can't really control it. Like trying to control the way that you grow, trying to control the way that your experience evolves is uh futile.
Yeah.
You know?
It's all about accepting and learning the best ways to be you along the journey that like help you in the long run. Like I've definitely, since I've shifted my mindset, like that doesn't mean I've hit less like hard times. It just means when those hard times come, like they're less like damaging to me as a person. And it's kind of more of just like a little nudge in the shoulder instead of just like a punch in my gut or face. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, you know what? It happens sometimes. Like sometimes I step in the mud puddle and I have to change my shoe. But other times it's just like, yeah, there are still like things that are pebbles and then there are things that are boulders when it comes to like walking around, and you just have to kind of accept and love yourself through the journey, and don't put happiness and love as a future thing. Realize that that's something that you can have now, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something that you can take along the journey with you the whole time.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, that's very well said. I think that's a beautiful reminder that like happiness and love isn't something that is in a future moment. It's something that is here now. You just have to look, and it's you're gonna find it if you really want it, because it is within you. It's always with you.
Yep.
You just have to, and sometimes you just need the tools to find it.
Yeah.
Lord knows it took me a while to get those tools.
Yeah,
Because
and a
now
tool that
now
works
I can
today.
find it very easily, but like there was times where I had a really hard time and I thought I would never find joy and I was gonna be miserable for the rest of my life. A little dramatic too, but
Reading from one of your old journal entries. Yeah, I mean, there is definitely like times where I had to learn how to use certain tools in my life to uncover those parts, and know that the tool you use today might not be the tool you have to use tomorrow to find that. But it's always there. It's not always easy to find. Sometimes you have to share vulnerable parts of yourself with people around you, and they've got the tools to help you. We were put on this earth to be connected as human beings. We are not here to survive this lifetime alone. And you just have to be willing to put yourself out there and accept help when you need it. Uh,
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to pick yourself up, and that's not easy, but it's well worth it at the end because it's a journey that you will learn so many things from.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I see that we came to our hour. So I just want to
Hmm.
take this time to say thank you so much for coming on here. I absolutely adore you as a person. And if there's anything that you would like to share right here at the end, go for it.
Thank you. I just like mostly I just wanted to say thank you, um, for giving me the space to talk to you about this, because I love sharing my experience. I love sharing my joy and the growth that I've gone through, and it is an absolute honor to be a part of the Positive Talks. I've always loved um, watching them whenever you put them on live, whenever I have the chance, because I don't always have the chance to watch them, but whenever I have the chance, it's so nice to see, positivity being put out into the world, and I'm really honored to be able to be a part of that. And for you to it feels very validating to my experience, which is wonderful. So I really thank you. And then the only other thing that came to me to say is, if anybody else like has questions or wants to learn more about the practices, the meditation practice that I use for my own personal growth, I'm always happy to take messages. I can teach seminars. In fact, I'll be teaching a seminar on the 27th. Um, in person. It's a very small. Usually, I just do it by the man, with people who ask me to learn. Um, but I'm always happy to share my experience in a personal manner. So if anybody watching wants to contact me, I'm always happy to support, to share my experience. That is always a joy.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you've definitely helped me through a lot of things, and I'm glad we reconnected after the distant communication that we had. But I definitely think that you came into my life at the right time, and I'm definitely excited to continue our friendship throughout from here on out. So I will definitely keep in touch. And yeah, thank you so much for putting yourself out as a resource for people that might really grow from your experience and your knowledge. So definitely
Of
stay
course.
connected, and I will talk to you soon.
Of course. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
All right. Ciao.